Greetings and salutations out there. It's David Duford here at davidduford.com, where I help insurance agents like you become top producing insurance professionals. So I am doing my new agent interview series, really, reviewing the first year experience that agents have had in an effort to really explain what it's like to not just be a new agent, but also to succeed as a new agent. Too many agents in this business fail prematurely, I believe. And I think there's lessons to be learned through the stories and experience of others so as not to repeat the mistakes of, or I should say, the likelihood of many people failing out. So today I am joined with Mr. Kyle Souter. Say hello, Kyle.
Hey there.
Thanks for joining me, Kyle. Kyle is an aged of mine. He's been in the business quite a while. And what he's going to do with us today is kind of take us back through what his first year was like in the insurance business. So why don't we kind of start there, Kyle? Let's hear and learn a little bit more about yourself, if you don't mind starting there.
Sure. So like you said, Kyle Souter. I live in Dayton, Ohio, with my fiance, and we have our little girl who just turned 1. Been doing insurance. I think I got licensed when I was 23. And yeah, it's been pretty awesome ever since then.
How old are you now?
29.
Oh man, I'm jealous. I started when I was 27, and I wish I would have. I mean, I don't have regrets, but it would be nice to have started earlier to learn all the lessons while you're still young. So that's great. So
yes.
What did you do before you got into insurance sales? Was this your dream job? Did you always want to sell insurance, or how did you end up here?
Yeah, definitely not. Didn't really have what I did before. I went to school, so I studied psychology. I got out of school, and first job with my college degree, I started looking for jobs on Craigslist. And somebody emailed me. I went in for an interview, and I was what's called an infield marketer. So it's like, yeah, it was
Craigslist infield marketer. Where's this going?
Right. So it was $10 an hour, and I could make bonus. And basically, I was an appointment setter. So I was doing direct marketing, and our job, basically, we would be in Sam's Clubs and Myers, if you guys have those in Tennessee. I would walk up to people all day long, 8 hours a day, walk the store and try to get them signed up for a big drawing where they could win a house full of windows or a new bathroom remodel. And so my job was to sign them up and then convert them to a real appointment within 72 hours, where a sales guy comes out and tries to sell them, $20,000 worth of windows.
So you're like a fronter / lead generator in this job, right?
Yeah, I was just a lead generator.
Yeah,
basically. So that's how I got started, man. I kind of refer to it now. It's like I thought I was good at communication before that, but it sharpens you. It's like a communication boot camp is what I always call it now.
It's like I liken it to when I hear agents, and not everybody would agree with me on this, but there's a lot of really good agents that start with shops that they don't provide leads, their commission stinks. And then you'll read a write-up on their Facebook feed, and they're like, I'm so grateful for my captive. I'm so grateful for the chains around my my shackles around my feet. But then there's something to it, because they kind of learn from really the crappiest position. And I guess what I'm hearing in your respect is, this sounds like the beginning of a career in sales. You learn like literally hand-to-hand combat starting off, right? I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it was good. And I remember I have a specific memory where we would go in once a month. We'd go down to the corporate office, and the actual in-home sales reps would be, meeting right before us. And so we were obviously, like, as far as skill set, we were a little bit lower quality. We weren't paid as well.
Right.
But, I'd show up to these meetings and see them, and I remember thinking they wore khakis. They had loafers on. They just looked like they made more money.
Right.
So it was interesting to me, like right off the bat, I was kind of intrigued. Like, I think I could probably do that. So
did you transition to the in-home sales, or does this kind of a way that you got into insurance? What was the next step then?
yeah. So um, I worked there for about a year, and ironically, my supervisor there who hired me, which I didn't know this at the time, she had an insurance license. She had been with AIL previously. And so I worked for this job, it was pretty tough work, like walking around Myers, and
Yeah, definitely.
it can be tough, things people would say to you.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just go call your mom, take a break. But so the lady who hired me, after I left this home improvement company, she had called me and told me about a different opportunity, and told me to go to opportunity meeting. I could go check this thing out. And it was insurance. And she said that it pays, you make about $500, and they are filling out a form. Like, they're requesting the information. And I was pretty interested in learning more about it. So yeah, that Craigslist job led to a relationship that led me to being recruited into a IMO that I wasn't so great, but I'm very thankful for now, like you mentioned. So it's funny how things happen.
Yeah, definitely. The things we do now have long-term impacts, and even if it's not the best of scenarios, it's sharpening the saw, or there's always a way to look at it positively,
Yeah.
and so many agents have that story to where they started off, in the sense, in unideal situations, but worked their way out of it and survived. And I
Yeah.
think, like I mentioned earlier, and like you agree, it's formative in your development. So
Yeah.
what caused you to be interested in insurance? I mean, obviously you had a contact that had an interest in it. What specifically about insurance sales? Is it the money? Was it helping people? Has that changed now? Kind of describe that.
Yeah. I reflected on this quite a bit. So one of the things that happened at that home improvement company was I did okay. I'd make between $20 and $25 an hour after bonuses and stuff. And I had saved money, and I kept my bills low. I was like 22 at the time. And I remember this specific memory. I had saved up some money. So I had like $7,000 in my account, and I was 22, but I had one day off a week, and it was Tuesday. And I remember, long story short, I remember being frustrated because my girlfriend at the time, who's now my fiance, she was at school. She was an athlete. She had a job. I couldn't spend any time with her. All my friends worked regular jobs, day jobs. And I had some money where you would think you could have some fun when you're 22. But that day on my day off, I went to the local mall, and I found myself like shopping in JCPenney clearance. And it's just a weird moment, man, where it sticks with you. I remember thinking like, dude, this is what I'm doing with my day off. And the lesson I took away from it was I need money and time. I want them
Yeah.
both.
Yes.
And so I was fortunate to learn that young. And that's still my philosophy, really. I mean, like, it hasn't changed that much. So that's kind of what intrigued me about it, man, was the idea where I could have money and time, because one without the other sucks,
How much time did it take to get both money and time? Because I think you make a great point, because the nice thing, a lot of people are attracted into insurance because they're in a job that it's just a grind. They're making good money, but their life sucks. They don't see their kids. They don't have a
Right.
relationship with their family. They're not pursuing not alternative, but hobbies. They're not personally growing.
Yeah.
Making money, but as an end of itself, is not satisfying. So how long, but you got to work your way up to that. So I guess kind of, we're jumping forward a little bit, but you bring up a great point. I mean, did you have time immediately, or, and probably is relative to what you were doing? Can you kind of expand on that experience for you?
Yeah. So like the process of, it kind of makes me want to talk about like when I actually got started. And so the way it's played out for me was I got licensed. I had a little bit of money saved from the last job, the home improvement place. And I had dwindled my money away. Basically took the whole summer off and just had fun. And then I was like, all right, well, I'll get this insurance license. So I went and met with this guy. And I said, well, I'm going to Florida for a week. So when I get back, I'll get into insurance school. Which, thinking back now, he probably thought, yeah, I'll never see that kid again.
Yeah, right.
But I came back, got licensed, and didn't have a lot of money because I had been irresponsible and didn't get started when I should have got started. So I ran like 6 appointments, didn't sell anything. I was like, all right, I got to get a job. So I got a job making $35,000 a year, supposedly commission on top, but nobody made any commission. And so $35,000, I was doing inside sales, telemarketing. And I did that for probably 6 months before I started getting into the insurance. And so I started running evening appointments and some on the weekends. And that's where I kind of started, making some sales and getting a little bit of an idea of how it works.
So you, in a sense, started part-time selling insurance, right?
Yes, I did.
When you have people that recruit or build agencies, a lot of them don't want part-time, but do you see it as something that's viable for the right person? Or is it really best to jump in with both feet now looking back?
Well, I mean, if just in my instance, if they would have been like that with me, like, no, you don't have that option, even though you're all commission and we're not paying you, then I would have been like, who knows, man, maybe I wouldn't have went back to it. Well, if I can't do part-time, I certainly can't do full-time, so I think it can benefit people. People do what they want to do. And it helped me, but everybody, I wish there was a way to figure it out. If there was one answer, it'd make it simpler, but I think it just comes down to the person. And when I got that job at Harry and David working, I knew I was going to quit. Like I knew that was part of the plan. Like I had that plan. I knew that I wasn't surprised. I don't know. I knew my intentions and I had my mindset when I went into it. So I think part-time can be really useful. And even if you never transition full-time, I mean, if you make one sale every other week, I mean, that's a lot of money to a lot of people.
Yeah.
If you say that's $800 a month, I mean, that might pay a lot of people's mortgages or their car payment or so. Yeah, I think part-time is very useful.
So this was basically your first 90 days in the business, more or less, or how long were you part-time until you transitioned to full-time?
Yeah, probably my first 90 days were part-time. And so mine's kind of unique because, when I first got licensed, like I said, I ran those 6 appointments, but nothing happened. And then I got a job and then I kind of got pulled away from it. And not only just physically, but mentally. When I started devoting all that time, I wasn't plugged in as much. I started to lose some motivation and some focus, and all of that caused me to kind of take longer than I needed to.
So go back. I want you to recall and paint the picture of what it was like running your first appointment. What product were you selling? How did it go? How well prepared were you? Give me the kind of overall scoop on what happened.
Yeah. Was not prepared at all. They started me with basically one carrier. I totally wung it. I did not study anything. it was a mess. I remember, so I was part-time, of course. So I would drive to this office after I'd get off work and make dials for like 2 hours. I dialed, and I booked one appointment. It was my first appointment ever, and it was at like 7 p.m. So I had all day to think about it. I think it was like a Saturday night, so I didn't even work during the day, and so I was like so anxious and nervous, man, in anticipation of this. I remember going to the gym and running and trying to like calm down.
Right.
So anyways, I get out there and they had insurance in place. I had no idea really what I was doing. I didn't have a plan. Which, reflecting back, it's like, it's hard to be confident doing something you've never done.
Right.
And so you're going to be anxious and you're going to have a lot of fear, and there's going to be a lot of feelings that you've got to just understand. Just take our word for it. Like, it's part of it. You're not a coward, or it's just normal. I mean, I would, so I got a little bit slightly jittery before we started this little interview. It's just, I was like, that's silly.
It's the old, I liken it to back in, being on the savannah in Africa when we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. It's like, that's like real fear. Like, this is just a survival mechanism that kicks in. Stress is stress. You just you live in a modern day society where the most stressful thing is you're going to be in front of a group of people or something stupid, but they'll react the same way. So, yeah.
Right.
So I had the question about your first presentation. You're telling me you weren't prepared, and you kind of touch on this, and I think it's worth repeating, especially for new agents that are thinking or just about to get started. Could you, looking back, hindsight is 20/20, I know, but knowing what you know now, could you really have been prepared at that point in time with what you have known, which is little, because you're just getting started? I mean, was there any way to avoid that?
No, I don't think so, man. And being the IMO I came from before, I recruited a lot of agents and tried to train a lot of people. And something somebody said to me that always stuck with me is, we have this habit of, we always want to make it easier on these agents that we hire. We want to find a way to make it easier on them.
Right. Yeah.
And there's just no way to do it. Not that I know of, and not that they know of. So it's just part of it. And I think one thing that I could have, and I don't know if it would help, but just borrowing, since we don't, as a new agent, since you don't have the perspective, borrow your perspective, borrow Dave Duford's perspective, borrow your upline's perspective. And hopefully your upline's like, willing to open up and share that. But perspective is huge. Perspective will lower your blood pressure. And it's one of the biggest parts of this business, I think. So
sounds like there's a little bit of a leap of faith, if you will, that you have to take in the people who show you the way.
Definitely, man. Definitely. And just in investing in getting the insurance license, and which I know one thing you do is take people on ride-alongs sometimes, like, hey, check it out before you, get involved. Go on a ride-along with somebody. I never went on a ride-along. Yeah, I never saw anything, that I could base it off of. But it's weird how it does really, the first sale I made, it really did just click. I just, all I did was implement 2 things in the beginning, and then I made a sale.
Right.
And so.
Yeah, I think a good point to take out of this for the new agents listening to this is execution is what matters in this business. Whoops. Hold on one second. How's that coming through? All right. Sorry about that, Kyle.
No worries.
All right. This is live recording here, and I'm not going to even take that out. So, so as I was saying, one of the perspectives to take out of this thing is you got to execute. Like right now, you just go with the flow. You just act. You execute. You don't worry about everything being 100% perfect. It never can be. And it's hard to understand this, and that's why I mentioned the whole leap of faith thing. I made a Facebook post today about some guy asking me for a guarantee that he'll be successful. I can't do that. Anybody with any credibility would say the same thing.
Right.
So you have to understand you won't know everything, and there's no human physical way to know everything except by the action that you take and the mistakes that you make. And so specifically to you guys out there who are perfectionists, and you know who you are, don't be, because that attitude just blocks success. You will become closer to perfect, never perfect though, but closer to perfect, only through time and trial and error.
Yeah.
So tell us what kind of business total did you write in your first year as far as production goes?
So when I was part-time and stuff, I don't even know really what I submitted. I think that my 1099 was like 40,000
Okay.
part-time. My first full year, I submitted 150,000.
Great.
And that was just working appointments, booking about 15 appointments a week. I ran on Fridays and Saturdays.
Really? Okay. That's it?
Yeah.
Only 2 days a week?
Yeah, well, it's 2 full days, but yeah,
Right, yeah.
It's 2 days a week. That's what they taught where I was at. They taught us. There was a producer who did a lot of training, and I copied when he dialed, when he ran his appointments, and everything. And that full year, I learned a lot. It wasn't the most efficient, of course. It wasn't, like you said, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't the most efficient business,
Right.
My persistency, my placement probably wasn't where it should have been. It wasn't awful, but you learn a lot, in those early times.
So, and for the audience's sake, what products were you selling in those appointments?
Yeah, I was doing mostly mortgage protection, which people a lot of times they think that that's term, and sometimes you're writing term, but I took final expense leads too, but a lot of the time on a mortgage protection lead, I would write a whole life. You're sitting with an older couple, they don't qualify for a term, and you're doing some kind of like payment protection,
right?
Something like that. So,
and for you guys who don't know what that is, can you explain how the payment protection concept works?
Yeah. So, say you're sitting with a couple, and husband's worried that something happens to me. I want my wife to have some options. Well, if he's 69 and he's had some health stuff, he's not going to be able to get the full $180,000 mortgage covered, but you might be able to give him a whole life policy that would equate to 12 months, 24 months, 36 months worth of payments. So it buys the wife some time. It's a really simple, complex concept to sell. And that's basically it. It gives them time to sell the house, get the equity out of it. The wife's not stranded, basically. She has some options.
And the thing is like, I was surprised, when I talked to a bunch of agents, and like that concept represents, I wouldn't say it's a majority of sales, but it's a pretty big percentage of the sales they make are people who are buying houses in their older years that maybe they're too old for term, or they don't like the idea of something that goes away in 10 years because of their age. They can't get anything longer. Maybe their health medically can't qualify, but it leads to some pretty nice sized cases, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, if you think of the new agents out there listening to this, and I'm sure some are going to struggle or are struggling.
Sure.
What kind of advice would you give them to turn around their struggles into success, to get better results?
Well, the biggest thing I've heard you say it this way is, and this is the truth, it's being a good soldier. Just following a system, whatever system that you have in place. And one thing to keep in mind, maybe this will help the new agents believe what I'm saying. Your upline is probably making an override. So they want you to be successful, because if you're successful, they're being incentivized, they're being paid.
Sure.
And one thing I didn't know at the time, I was fortunate that I followed the system, but new agents should know, it's good to know how much time your upline probably spends looking for productive, good agents, people who will get a license and actually invest in leads and actually make calls. When you spend a lot of time looking for this person, you know, they really want to pour into you. If you're going to be willing to get started, they're going to try their best to help you. So I would say, listen to your upline who's had experience, who's doing what you would like to do. And just understand that you're not going to have perspective in the beginning. And I know one thing that helped me when someone told me this, in the beginning, it takes way more energy than it does now. Like for me, but that's because, and I went through the beginnings, like there's no way around it. You know, it's like you're trying to get to a destination and it's a one-way street and there's just one entryway, there's one exit, that's it. And so it just comes down to work, you know, work the numbers. And when you're working the numbers, work the numbers the way you were told to work them. Like follow the system. And the last thing I'll add without going on too long is invest in more leads, have more leads. And one thing that I thought in the beginning, man, that was really helpful for me was two things I thought. One is my goal is not to sell my first appointment. My goal is not to be successful on my first week. It is to become successful, you know, down the road. It's going to take some time. And if you know that going in and you expect that, it might help you.
Perspective again. It's realistic, right? Yeah.
Learning how to provide yourself with perspective on your own, you know, like being able to provide yourself with perspective is huge. That if you don't always need somebody to do it, I'm sure there's some good books about it. And there was something else I was going to say, but I can't, it's not coming back to me. So maybe it'll come back to me in a second.
I'll ramble on here for a minute and then maybe just interrupt me when it does. A couple of things. Number one, it's funny how these conversations I have with agents, they all seem to come down to the fundamentals. You know, I like doing these interviews selfishly because I get to hear from the perspectives of successful long-term agents. And I get the benefit because I watch all my videos by default, right? You know, because I record them and I'm doing them live and I'm talking to different agents. And I'm always thinking in the back of my mind, you know, what is the thing with all these agents? Like, what's the stuff that they've got that others don't? And it always comes down to an understanding of the fundamentals. It comes down to a proper mindset and an execution, action orientation. You know, the people who are successful don't rest on their laurels. They don't bask in their problems. They, you know, mitigate them as much as possible and do what they can and have the proper perspective about the situation they're in. And there's so much, again, I used to look at this as a newer agent and think, well, that doesn't help me. You know, how do I close more deals? And here's the thing. Some lessons can't be taught, right? And you have to go through the crucible. We were talking earlier, it's very valuable to start at the bottom. Not at the time, but later on, you will appreciate, you know, the basic training that you got because it will pay dividends.
Yeah.
And for you new guys that are out there starting in this profession, that's pretty much where you're at right now. You're at the bottom of the totem pole. You're in the crucible. It's survive or die. And most of you will die. I hate to say it. Maybe about 10% of you will make it. So you need to be focused on what can I do to be the 1 out of 10, the 10% that actually have a fighting chance of not just survival, but thriving too. Because what we want is what Kyle mentioned from the beginning, which is the ability to not just have an income, but to also have a lifestyle too, where you can do things without being plugged into your job 80 hours a week at the mercy of somebody else. You can achieve lifestyle and income, good income in the insurance business.
Yeah.
It's going to take time and perspective. And then one funny thing, it's funny you mentioned about the energy level. Yeah, you know, this is just like jiu-jitsu. what you'll find in jiu-jitsu is like your more advanced belts don't try. They seem like they don't try nearly as much, but it's because they've put the reps in. They understand the technique. They don't have to be as strong or as physical in prowess to tap you out, versus a white or a blue belt who their focus is strength and they don't have technique, but they'll get smashed constantly, you know, if the advanced belts want to try it. And that's the point, is you don't get to the point of, you know, in the beginning, you're going to have all this energy. It's going to be very stressful. There's going to be a lot going on when it starts off, and you're learning everything. It's like drinking from, you know, a fire hose, but you got to put the faith in, put the reps in, right, and the time, and all of this stuff will become automatic. It is with me, man. I can sit here and not sell for a month and go out in the field. It's like clicking the light on, and everything I've ever learned comes out of the subconscious. And it's like I never missed a step. So do you remember what you're going to mention, Kyle?
Yeah, you did a great job. It came back to me. So the other thought that that's a great example about the jiu-jitsu. I like that.
It is.
I'll probably remember that.
Exactly the same, man. And I'm sure it's true for any sports performance. There's just less, it's more technique as time goes on, and it becomes automated and subconscious and not necessarily as energy expending. But go ahead.
Yeah. So the other thing I was, in the beginning, kind of a mindset I thought that I had was, I remember telling myself, like, you know, I had a job, of course. So I had a full-time job. So I was part-time. But one of the benefits is that I could afford to think, like, you know, I don't even care if I lose money.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care if I lose money or break even. And like, I've become pretty good at this, but I remember in the beginning, you know, and I was a confident person, but I remember being asked, like, Kyle, if you buy 20 of these leads, do you think, and you spend this much money, do you think you can sell one? Because if you sell one, you're going to break even.
Right. Those
were the numbers. And my response was, I mean, I would like to think so. Yeah. You know, so I wasn't like this crazy, like, I had doubts, you know, and so, but then I became pretty good at it. But so I don't know. I wanted to share that because I think it's important. Like, don't put a time limit on it. You know, don't say, if I'm not making this much money in, you know, 4 weeks, it's like, it might take you longer to learn this. It doesn't mean that it's not worth it.
Would you say that might be one of the benefits of selling insurance part-time, is it affords you more ability to handle the cost of doing business and not necessarily threaten your regular financial payment bills and requirements?
I would say so. I mean, it did for me. It can be an expensive skill to learn, you know. Yeah. And if you're trying to just understand that there's going to be a price to learn the skill, but the more, kind of how life works, I guess, the more you pay, the more. Sorry, my fiance is trying to FaceTime me. I don't know if I'm on there. Or...
Yeah, you're all right, man. Okay. We can hear you.
Okay, cool. So, you know what I was saying, Dave?
There's a price we all have to pay for success. And number two, I'll interject and add, you have to survive if you want to be successful in this business. And survival is not, it's short term for sure, but it's also long term. I think it was Al Granum, one of these old insurance legend books I read over here. And essentially he said, look at selling insurance like you're in the school of hard knocks. You got 4 years that you've got to get through before you start making the big bucks. I think, can you make money faster than that? Sure. But I think that it also puts perspective on, hey, that's how long it takes to learn this business. Okay. It looks simple from the outside in, right? Because we all make it look that way, but there's so much nuance that you're not necessarily seeing until you get out there and start seeing it for yourself. So,
yeah.
If you really want FaceTime.
I know, man. I know.
Well, hey, this is a good place to end anyway. So, Kyle, I really appreciate your time. Last thing, I know you're talking about a website. You're in Dayton, Ohio. Is there any way if somebody's around your area wants to reach out and talk to you about working with you, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so if they're interested in working with me, best thing to do right now would be to call me directly. We'll go with the email. It's my last name, Souter, S-T-U-D as in dog, E-R, Kyle, K-Y-L-E, @gmail.com. Website will be up soon. And but for now, let's go with the email and hopefully find a few people local that I can maybe help out.
So Souter, Kyle @gmail.com.
Yes, sir.
Okay, remind me, send me a message, and then I'll include that in the description box on this video when it goes live on YouTube. So, Kyle, I appreciate your time. Enjoyed it.
Yes.
And have a good weekend.
Awesome. Thank you. You too, Dave.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.